There are some stories in Hollywood that grip the world not because of scandal or fame, but because of courage, resilience, and the human heart's refusal to surrender. And few journeys have inspired millions the way Michael J. Fox's has. For decades, he lit up screens with his energy, his humor, and that unmistakable spark that made him one of the most beloved actors of his generation. But behind the laughter and iconic roles lies a battle most of us could never imagine fighting. Yet Michael has faced it every single day, with a strength few possess. Today at 64, whispers surround the actor's health as fans worry. Friends speak softly and his family draws closer than ever. This isn't a story about fame fading. It isn't about giving up. It's about a man who changed the world with his talent, and then changed it again with his bravery. A man who chose to fight his diagnosis not in silence, but by using his voice to give hope to millions, through every tremor, every tough moment, every day that demanded more than the day before. Michael J. Fox has remained a symbol of light in darkness. And now, as life's fragility becomes more visible, we don't look away. We stand with him, honoring the legacy of a fighter who never stopped believing in tomorrow. Because this isn't just a goodbye story. It's a reminder of what it means to live, truly live, even when the world grows heavy. Long before the world knew his name, long before the bright lights and movie sets, Michael J. Fox was just a small kid with big dreams living in Edmonton, Canada. He wasn't the tallest, he wasn't the strongest, and teachers didn't always understand his restless imagination. But Michael had something greater. A spark, a belief that life held something remarkable for him, even if he couldn't quite see what it was yet. While other kids planned ordinary futures, Michael dared to imagine a world far beyond the horizon. Acting wasn't just a hobby for him, it was oxygen. It was the place where he felt alive, where he wasn't limited by size or circumstance but lifted by possibility. By the time he reached his teens, that spark had turned into determination. With barely any money and no guarantees, Michael moved to Los Angeles, chasing a dream most people told him was impossible. He slept on friends' floors, skipped meals, and auditioned until exhaustion blurred the days. Hollywood was harsh, but Michael had grit that couldn't be taught. He didn't storm into success. He climbed there inch by inch, heart first. Then came the moment everything changed. Family ties. Audiences didn't just like him. They adored him. He wasn't a typical leading man. He didn't tower over the screen. Instead, he disarmed you with charm, timing, sincerity. And suddenly, the kid who almost didn't belong anywhere became the actor who belonged everywhere. And then, lightning struck twice. Back to the Future. Michael wasn't just a star. He became a cultural phenomenon. His face was on posters, his movies filled theaters, and his boyish grin became a symbol of youthful energy and endless possibility. Fame didn't consume him. He carried it lightly, grounded, grateful, always aware of the struggle it took to get there. But life has a way of humbling even the brightest lights. In his late 20s, at a time when most careers are just beginning, Michael received news that would change everything. A diagnosis that didn't feel real, one that doctors told him would bring an early decline. Parkinson's disease wasn't something he could laugh off, work around, or charm away. It was a weight, silent at first, then steady, then unignorable. At first he hid it. Not out of shame, but because he needed time. Time to understand, to breathe, to gather himself. He was young, newly married, on the peak of a career many actors only dream of. And suddenly, the future he fought so hard to reach seemed uncertain, fragile, rewritten by fate without his permission. But here's where most stories would turn dark, and his didn't. Michael refused to collapse under fear. He chose honesty, strength, advocacy. Instead of stepping away quietly, he stepped forward loudly, and the world listened. His vulnerability made him stronger. His struggle became a mission. His pain became hope for millions, and yet he remained human. A father, a husband, a man who, behind the courage, faced private moments of fear, doubt, and exhaustion. He didn't pretend to be invincible. He simply kept going, and that's always been his power. Now, at 64, as time gently slows him down and loved ones stay closer than ever, We look back on those early years with reverence. The boy who dreamed, the young star who climbed, the man who never quit, because even now, with challenges growing heavier, one truth remains unshaken. Michael J. Fox never stopped believing in tomorrow, and he taught us all to do the same. There are moments in a person's life when the world stops, when time stands still just long enough for everything you thought you knew to change. For Michael J. Fox, that moment happened quietly in a doctor's office, long before the public knew. He was still young, still rising, still filling screens with laughter and life. And yet the words he heard that day carried a weight no script could prepare him for. Parkinson's disease, progressive, life-altering, no cure. He walked out into the California sunshine that day with a storm inside him. Fame seemed suddenly meaningless. Success felt fragile. And the future he had chased since he was a boy, suddenly felt unclear, as though someone had dimmed the lights on a stage he wasn't finished performing on. He was 29. Most actors are just learning who they are at that age. Michael was learning how to say goodbye to the body he once trusted. At first he hid it, not to deceive, but to survive. He worked through tremors, through anxiety, through the fear of being seen as fragile in an industry that feeds on strength. He took roles, delivered performances, and fought a battle behind the scenes that few could comprehend. Nights were the hardest, the silence, the uncertainty, the fear that tomorrow might look different than today. He turned to alcohol for a time, searching for escape, numbness, a break from the reality that never left his side. But Michael was never built to break quietly. And when the darkness threatened to take more than his health, he made a decision that defined him far more than any film ever could. He chose to fight. He chose honesty. He chose to live with purpose, not despair. He put down the bottle and lifted up his voice. He shared his diagnosis publicly, not because he wanted sympathy, but because he wanted meaning. In an instant, he transformed from actor to advocate, from icon to warrior. Then came the Michael J. Fox Foundation, not a vanity project, but a revolution. While others hoped, he acted. While others whispered, he spoke boldly. While others accepted fate, he chased a cure for millions. He raised hundreds of millions of dollars. He pushed science, funding, awareness. He inspired fellow patients, families, doctors, researchers, and everyday people who needed someone to show them that diagnosis did not equal defeat. But even heroes feel pain. Off camera, life wasn't simple. Tremors grew stronger, movement slower, days more exhausting. Every button fastened, every step taken, every glass lifted, all became victories. And yet, he never stopped smiling that familiar smile, the one audiences fell in love with decades ago. He laughed at himself, not in hopelessness, but in defiance. He didn't ask the world to pity him. He asked it to keep moving, keep fighting, keep believing. Family became his anchor. His wife, Tracy, unwavering, devoted, carrying not just his hand but his heart through each challenge. His children, growing into adults watching their father demonstrate what strength truly means. Hollywood applause fades. Awards gather dust. But the quiet love of a family who never lets you fall, that is the real legacy. Now, as Michael stands at 64, with each step measured and each day treasured, the world watches not to mourn, but to admire. He has already won battles few could fight. He has already given more hope than most ever will. And though the road ahead may be uncertain, one truth remains clear. Michael J. Fox has never been defined by his illness. He has been defined by his refusal to surrender to it. The boy who chased dreams grew into a man who chased hope and brought millions with him. With each passing year, Michael J. Fox continued to do what many believed impossible, to wait you were. To laugh, to show up, even as his body fought against him. Fame had once been the force pulling him forward, but now it was something much deeper. Love. Love for his family, for life itself, and for a world that still needed his optimism more than ever. At home, behind quiet doors and away from cameras, his story became less about Hollywood and more about the precious, ordinary moments that define a life. Mornings were slower, movements more careful, a hand placed gently on a doorframe to steady himself, a pause before a step. Yet every small act, brushing his teeth, hugging his children, sharing breakfast with Tracy, became its own victory, a celebration of the simplest joys. Some days came heavy with tremors and fatigue, and other days offered moments of clarity where strength returned just long enough to remind him of who he was before illness tried to take center stage. And through it all, the constant presence of love formed a shield far stronger than muscle or medicine. Tracy Pollan, his wife of more than 3 decades, never walked ahead and never trailed behind. She stood right beside him, every step of the way. Marriage vows are easy to speak, but life tests them quietly, over time. She stayed through every doctor's appointment, every difficult morning, every tear wiped in silence. Their love story was never built on red carpets or spotlight romance. It was built in kitchens, in hospital waiting rooms, in quiet nights where she whispered strength into him when he felt himself fading. In her, Michael did not just find support. He found his reason. Their children watched not a celebrity, but a father who refused to surrender dignity, who showed them resilience not in speeches, but in the way he steadied his hands, lifted his chin and tried again the next day. For them, he wasn't the actor from their favorite movies. He was the man who sat at the dinner table, who listened to their stories, who loved them fiercely even when his body tired faster than his heart ever could. His friends, some legends in Hollywood, others quiet souls far from fame, stood by him too, not because of who he was, but because of who he is. Loyal, funny, humble, and deeply human. Humor remained his armor. Even as Parkinson's tightened its grip, Michael found ways to joke, to laugh, to lighten the air around him. It wasn't denial. It was strength in its purest form. When life grows heavy, laughter can be a lifeline. Yet behind the strength were moments he allowed himself to feel the weight. Moments where frustration spilled quietly into tears, where exhaustion pressed hard, where he wondered how many more years he would have like this. Not because he feared death, but because he loved life so deeply. He loved mornings. He loved music. He loved Tracy's smile, his children's voices, the sound of laughter in his home, saying goodbye to moments one by one, the physical freedoms, the spontaneous adventures, the ease of movement, required a courage few ever witness, but many draw strength from. There comes a point in every battle where fighting is no longer about winning. It's about dignity. It's about presence. It's about choosing hope even when the path narrows. And as Michael enters the later chapters of his journey, his legacy already stands tall, not as the boy who traveled through time in a film, but as the man who helped millions believe they still had time. Time to love, to hope, to carry on. He reminds us that life isn't measured in years or ease. It's measured in heart. And his has never stopped beating loudly. The home is quiet now in the early light. A kettle warms, a familiar hum fills the kitchen, and Michael J. Fox sits peacefully near a window, watching the morning unfold. There was a time when mornings meant rushing to sets, running lines, fighting traffic, and living in the whirlwind of fame. Now the slow rise of the sun is enough. Sometimes the greatest moments arrive when life finally pauses. At 64, he knows time differently than most. It is not something to chase or fear. It is something to honor. Every day he wakes up is a gift. Every shared laugh, every memory recalled, every quiet afternoon with his family is its own celebration. Some people spend their whole lives searching for meaning. Michael found his early and strengthened it through every hardship. There are days when his movements falter, when speech comes a little slower, when rest feels like the only option. And yet, there is no bitterness in his voice, no trace of surrender. Instead, there is acceptance, not of defeat, but of life's natural rhythm. Gratitude, he always says, is what got me through. It still does. Even now, as challenges grow, he remains anchored in appreciation for the doctors working to advance science, for the fans who send love from every corner of the world, and most of all, for the family that never left his side. Tracy sits beside him often, their hands intertwined, not out of necessity, but out of devotion. Their love story has always been a quiet, powerful force, not dramatic, not performative, simply real. In her presence he finds calm, in his she finds purpose. Together, They built a life richer than any screenplay, a life of resilience, partnership, humor, and unwavering loyalty. Their children carry that torch forward, grounded not in fame but in compassion, shaped not by luxury but by example. There are moments when his family gathers around him, sharing stories, laughter, and memories that stretch across decades, from the dizzying heights of Hollywood superstardom to the quiet nights where courage had to speak louder than fear. These moments are not goodbyes, they are thank yous. Goodbyes are for endings, and Michael's story isn't about endings. It's about how a life can echo across time, changing hearts long after spotlights fade. Fans sometimes imagine him as the boy who traveled through time in a DeLorean, forever frozen in youth. But the truth is far more powerful. He grew, he endured. He transformed struggle into service. He turned pain into progress, uncertainty into hope, fame into legacy. Few actors get remembered decades later for their characters. Even fewer get remembered for their character. And now, when the world checks in on him, sees him moving carefully, speaking softly, leaning at times on support, they feel not sorrow but respect. A life well lived doesn't always end in ease. Sometimes it ends with strength worn visibly, courage etched in each breath, love shining brighter than any illness could dim. So when the day arrives, far in the future, when his family finally whispers farewell, it won't be a story of tragedy. It will be a story of triumph. A boy who dreamed, a man who soared, a fighter who never let fate extinguish his light. Until then, he sits in the sun, sips his tea, smiles at the life he built, and continues being exactly who he always has been, an inspiration. Proof that true greatness isn't measured in fame or longevity, but in the lives you touch, the hope you leave behind, and the courage you show when life tests you most. Michael J. Fox didn't just live a remarkable life. He taught the world how to face life with grace. And that legacy will never fade.